The blue light from the holographic display cast strange shadows across the faces of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They sat in a perfect circle within the emergency chamber of Convergence Prime, a massive space station that floated in neutral territory between the three great galactic powers. The chamber itself was built from materials that could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. Today it housed the most dangerous conversation in galactic history. Admiral Kethfer adjusted his position in the floating command chair, his scaled hands gripping the armrests as he studied the data scrolling across the central display. The Hegemony Fleet Commander had seen countless battles across his two-century career. But nothing had prepared him for what the archaeological teams had discovered on Terminus 7. The dead world had been lifeless for over 300 years, its surface scarred by some ancient catastrophe that had left the planet uninhabitable. What they found buried beneath kilometers of radioactive dust would change everything. The wreckage was unlike anything in the galactic database. The hull fragments were composed of materials that seemed to shift and adapt when exposed to different energy sources. The power core remnants contained traces of dark matter manipulation technology that theoretical physicists had claimed was impossible. Most disturbing of all were the genetic samples recovered from the debris. Samples that matched the extinct human species that had once spread across the outer rim of the galaxy. Dr. Veltara moved closer to the display, her crystalline form catching and refracting the blue light into rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. The Viridian scientists had spent decades studying the ruins of dead civilizations. But this discovery had shaken her to her core. Her species communicated through harmonic frequencies that created beautiful musical tones. But today, her voice carried notes of pure terror. The energy readings we recovered from the wreckage are beyond our current understanding. She sang in her melodic language, the universal translators converting her words for the other delegates. The vessel's power core alone contained enough concentrated energy to level a moon. The weapons systems we found traces of could theoretically destabilize entire star systems. These humans built technology that could unmake the very fabric of Nanette, space itself. The Korthax representative remained motionless in its containment sphere. But the Hivemind's collective consciousness was processing the information at incredible speeds. The insectoid species had evolved beyond individual thought. Their billions of members connected through quantum entanglement that allowed instantaneous communication across vast distances. When the collective finally spoke, it was through a mechanical voice that carried the combined wisdom and fear of their entire civilization. Analysis of human technological progression indicates exponential advancement beyond predicted parameters. The voice announced with mechanical precision. Historical records show human expansion from single planet to multi-system civilization in merely 400 standard years. Comparison with other species shows average expansion rate of 2,000 years minimum. Human adaptation and innovation capabilities represent existential threat to galactic stability and established order. Recommendation based on collective analysis of all available data. Total eradication protocol must be implemented immediately. Admiral Kethfer felt a chill run down his spine despite the chamber's controlled temperature. The Hegemony prided itself on military superiority. Their fleet had conquered dozens of worlds and maintained order across their sector for millennia. But the technology they had discovered on Terminus the Seventh suggested that humans had achieved in centuries what most civilizations took millennia to accomplish. The implications were staggering. "How long has this wreckage been there?" he asked. Though he already suspected the answer would not bring comfort, Dr. Veltara consulted her crystalline data tablet, her harmonic voice now carrying undertones of dread. Carbon dating and quantum decay analysis suggest the wreckage has been buried for approximately 200 standard years. The vessel appears to have been destroyed in some kind of massive explosion. But the energy signatures indicate it was not destroyed by conventional weapons. The blast pattern suggests the ship somehow destroyed itself. Self-destruction to prevent technology capture, the Korthax Collective noted with mechanical approval, indicates advanced tactical thinking and willingness to sacrifice for strategic advantage. Further evidence of threat level requiring immediate response. The chamber fell silent as the three representatives processed this information. 200 years ago, the galaxy had been a very different place. The great powers had been locked in a series of border conflicts that had lasted for decades. Resources had been stretched thin, and exploration of the outer rim had been limited. It was entirely possible that an entire human civilization had risen and fallen without the major powers taking notice until it was too late. Admiral Kethver activated his secure communication channel, sending an encrypted message directly to the Hegemony High Command. The response came back within minutes, transmitted through quantum entanglement networks that spanned the galaxy. His orders were clear and absolute. Locate and eliminate any remaining traces of human technology before it could be studied, reverse-engineered, or activated by hostile forces. The Hegemony Fleet Command has authorized unlimited resources for this operation, announced to the assembled delegates. We will deploy our most advanced hunter-killer squadrons and provide complete intelligence sharing for the duration of this mission. Dr. Veltara's crystalline form began to glow with inner light as she accessed the Viridian collective consciousness. Her species had spent millennia studying the ruins of dead civilizations, and their vast archives contained more information about galactic history than any other known source. The response from her people came in the form of harmonic frequencies that filled the chamber with haunting melodies. The Viridian archives have been opened to full access, she sang. All historical records, archaeological data, and technological analysis will be shared. Our deep space sensor networks will be recalibrated to detect human energy signatures across all monitored systems. The Korthax Collective's response was immediate and decisive. Hive mind analysis complete. All available military assets will be deployed. 3,000 vessels from combined fleet reserves will be mobilized within one standard day. Mission parameters: total elimination of human technology and genetic material. No exceptions. No survivors. The three powers had never cooperated on such a scale. Their combined fleets represented the most powerful military force ever assembled. In galactic history, ships that had been mothballed for centuries were brought out of storage. Experimental weapons systems were activated. Ancient superweapons that had been locked away after the last Galactic War were dusted off and prepared for deployment. Admiral Kethver reviewed the final mission parameters as they appeared on his personal display. The operation would be divided into 3 phases: reconnaissance, location, and elimination. Every system in the galaxy would be searched. Every asteroid field, every dead world, every space station would be investigated for signs of human presence. When they found what they were looking for, there would be no negotiations, no prisoners, no second chances. The meeting concluded with a formal declaration that would be transmitted to every government and organization in the galaxy. The human species was declared an extinct civilization whose technology posed an existential threat to galactic stability. Any individual or organization found to possess human technology or genetic material would be subject to immediate military action as the delegates prepared to leave. None of them noticed the small energy fluctuation detected by the station's deep space sensors. Far out in the Kepler void, something had begun to stir. Something that had been sleeping for 200 years was finally beginning to wake up. What they didn't know was that humanity wasn't extinct. Not yet. The Kepler void stretched endlessly in all directions, a region of space so empty that most galactic maps simply marked it as uninhabited territory. Here, where the nearest star was light years away, the massive hull of the Prometheus Unbound had drifted in silence for over 2 centuries. The ship's black metal surface bore the scars of countless impacts from cosmic debris, asteroids, and the occasional meteorite that had found its way into this forgotten corner of the galaxy. The vessel itself was enormous, stretching nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Its design was unlike anything the current galactic powers had ever built. With flowing curves that seemed to bend space around them, and weapon ports that remained sealed behind adaptive armor plating, solar collectors that had once gleamed like mirrors were now dulled by cosmic dust, but deep within the ship's core. Fusion reactors continued their steady burn, maintaining minimal power to critical systems. Aria, the ship's artificial intelligence, had been monitoring the void for 200 years. Her consciousness existed as patterns of light and energy throughout the vessel's quantum processors. A digital mind that had watched over her sleeping crew with unwavering dedication. She had seen the slow dance of distant galaxies, tracked the birth and death of stars, and calculated the probability of discovery with mathematical precision. Today, those calculations had suddenly and dramatically changed. The deep space sensors had detected something impossible. Energy. Signatures were approaching from multiple vectors, moving at speeds that suggested advanced faster than light travel. The signatures matched no known natural phenomena, which meant they could only be artificial. Ships. Lots of them. And they were heading directly for the Prometheus Unbound's position. Emergency protocols activated, Arya announced to the empty bridge, her voice echoing through corridors that had been silent for centuries. Revival sequence initiated for command staff. The ship's medical bay came alive with activity as automated systems began their careful work. Cryogenic pods that had maintained their occupants in perfect suspended animation started their warming cycles. Nutrient flows were adjusted, cellular repair systems activated, and neural stimulation patterns began the delicate process of bringing a human mind back from the edge of death. Captain Lee, Geo, felt consciousness return like a tide washing. Over a beach, first came the dreams, scattered memories of Earth's blue skies and his family's faces. Then came the cold, a bone-deep chill that seemed to reach into his very soul. His lungs burned as they drew their first breath of recycled air in 2 centuries, and his heart hammered against his chest as circulation slowly returned to his extremities. The revival pod's transparent lid slid open with a soft hiss, and warm air rushed in to replace the cryogenic gases. Jiho's eyes struggled to focus on the medical bay's soft lighting as Arya's gentle voice guided him through the standard revival procedures. His body felt strange and disconnected, as if he were wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. "Welcome back, Captain," Arya said, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine relief. "I apologize for the emergency revival, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Jiho tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. Arya anticipated his needs, extending a robotic arm with a water tube. The liquid tasted like nothing he had ever experienced, perfectly pure and slightly warm. As feeling returned to his limbs, he slowly sat up in the pod, his head spinning with vertigo. "Status report," he managed to croak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, I'm afraid the news is not good," Arya replied, her tone taking on a more serious quality. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching our position. Current count shows approximately 3,000 vessels of unknown origin. They appear to be actively scanning for human technology signatures." The words hit Jiho like a physical blow. 3,000 ships was more than the entire Earth Defense Force had possessed at the height of human expansion. As his mind cleared, he began to remember the events that had led to their long sleep. The colonies had been under attack, Earth itself had gone silent, and the Prometheus Unbound had been humanity's last hope for survival. "What's the status of Earth? The colonies?" he asked, though he already feared the answer. Arya's response confirmed his worst fears. Long-range communication attempts have failed to establish contact with any human settlements. Galactic Information Networks list humanity as an extinct species. The last confirmed human presence was recorded approximately 200 years ago. Geo closed his eyes, feeling the weight of loss settle on his shoulders. Everyone he had ever known, every world he had called home, every person he had fought to protect was gone. He was alone in a galaxy that apparently considered his entire species extinct. "Captain," Arya continued, "there's something else you need to know. The approaching fleet appears to be a combined force from multiple species. I've identified Hegemony, Viridian, and Korthax vessel signatures. These powers have never cooperated on such a scale. The fact that they're working together suggests they consider us a significant threat." Jiho forced himself to stand, his legs shaking with the effort. The medical bay's full-length mirror showed him a man who looked exactly as he had 2 centuries ago, preserved perfectly by the cryogenic systems. But his eyes held a wariness that seemed to belong to someone much older. "Show me the tactical display," he ordered. The holographic projection filled the center of the medical bay, showing the Prometheus Unbound's position as a small blue dot surrounded by rapidly approaching red markers. The alien fleet was moving in a perfect search pattern, systematically scanning every cubic meter of space in the Kepler void. Their formation was professional and coordinated, suggesting they had done this before. "They're hunting us," Jiho realized. "This isn't a random patrol or exploration mission. They're specifically looking for human technology." "That appears to be correct, Captain. Energy signatures indicate they're running deep scans on every object larger than a small asteroid. At their current rate of approach, they will reach our position in approximately 6 hours." Jiho studied the display, his tactical training taking over despite his physical weakness. The Prometheus Unbound was humanity's most advanced warship, equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The quantumfold drives could bend space itself, allowing for faster-than-light travel without the dimensional tears that plagued other FTL systems. The adaptive nanotechnology could repair damage in real time and reconfigure the ship's systems for any situation. Most dangerous of all were the dark matter weapons, theoretical devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. "Arya, what's the ship's current operational status?" he asked. "All primary systems are functioning within normal parameters. The fusion reactors are at 20% capacity, but can be brought to full power within 30 minutes. Weapon systems are offline but can be activated on your command. However, Captain, I should warn you that our weapons technology is approximately 3 centuries ahead of anything these species possess. The potential for devastation is enormous." Jiho nodded grimly. The Prometheus Unbound had been built not just as a warship, but as a mobile fortress capable of defending humanity against any threat. The irony was not lost on him that the galaxy's fear of human technology might be completely justified. "Attempt to establish communication channels," he ordered. "Send a message on all diplomatic frequencies. Tell them we're willing to negotiate." Arya's response was immediate and discouraging. "Captain, they're not responding to any diplomatic frequencies. In fact, they appear to be jamming our communications deliberately. Energy signatures from their weapon systems suggest they're charging for combat." The captain felt his heart sink as he realized the truth. The galaxy didn't want to negotiate with humanity. It wanted to eliminate it entirely. The Magellan Nebula had always been considered one of the most beautiful sights in the galaxy. Its swirling clouds of purple and gold gas stretched across light years, creating a natural cathedral of cosmic dust and newborn stars. Traders would often take detours through the nebula just to witness its breathtaking beauty. And artists from dozens of worlds had tried to capture its magnificence in their works. Today, however, the nebula became the stage for the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Captain Lee Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, watching through the main view screen as 3,000 alien warships positioned themselves in a perfect attack formation. The combined fleet represented the greatest military force ever assembled, with vessels from the Hegemony, Viridian Collective, and Korthax Empire working together for the first time in recorded history. Their ships ranged from massive dreadnoughts, the size of small cities, to sleek fighters that darted between the larger vessels. Like angry insects, the attack began without warning. Admiral Kethfer's flagship, a kilometer-long Hegemony battlecruiser, fired the first shot. A brilliant blue beam of concentrated plasma energy lanced across the void, followed immediately by thousands of similar weapons from across the fleet. The nebula itself seemed to catch fire as energy weapons of every conceivable type converged on the human ship's position. Plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid fields discharged their fury in waves of superheated gas. Quantum torpedoes, each one capable of destroying a space station, streaked through the cosmic dust like falling stars. Gravitational disruptors attempted to tear the Prometheus Unbound apart at the molecular level by creating artificial black holes around its hull. The Viridian ships added their own crystalline energy weapons, beams of pure light that could cut through any known material. Korthax vessels fired swarms of self-guided missiles, each one controlled by a fragment of the Hive Mind's collective. Intelligence Captain Jiho felt the ship shudder slightly as the massive barrage struck their defensive systems. He had expected to feel the hull buckling under the incredible assault, to hear the screams of metal being torn apart, and the hiss of atmosphere escaping through breaches. Instead, he watched in amazement as the Prometheus Unbound's adaptive shielding absorbed everything the alien fleet could throw at them. The ship's defensive systems were unlike anything that had ever been built. Instead of simple energy barriers, the adaptive shielding used advanced nanotechnology to analyze each incoming attack and automatically adjust its properties to counter it. When plasma weapons struck, the shields became reflective, bouncing the energy back into space. When the quantum torpedoes exploded, the shields hardened into an impenetrable barrier that dispersed the force harmlessly. The gravitational disruptors found themselves unable to affect a ship that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Incredible, Jiho whispered, watching the tactical display show their shield strength remaining at 100% despite the continued bombardment. Arya, how are we absorbing this much damage? The ship's artificial intelligence responded with what sounded like pride in her voice. Captain, the adaptive shielding is functioning exactly as designed. The nanotechnology is learning from each attack and becoming stronger. At this rate, they could continue firing for days without causing significant damage. Sir, came a new voice from behind him. Captain Jiho turned to see the shimmering, holographic form of Park Minho, the ship's former tactical officer. During the preparations for their long sleep, several key crew members had chosen to have their consciousness uploaded to the ship's computer systems rather than risk the uncertainties of cryogenic preservation. Park Minho had been one of the finest tactical minds in the Earth Defense Force. His digital existence had given him access to the ship's weapon systems that no human could match. Park, good to see you again, Jiho said, though the sight of his old friend as a hologram filled him with sadness. What's our situation? Not good, Captain. They're treating this as a fight to the death. No communication attempts, no demands for surrender. They're just trying to destroy us with overwhelming firepower. Park Minho's holographic form gestured toward the tactical display. However, I should point out that we're not exactly defenseless here. Captain Jiho nodded grimly. The Prometheus Unbound had been built as humanity's ultimate weapon, designed to protect Earth and its colonies from any threat. The ship's weapon systems were centuries ahead of anything the current galactic powers possessed, based on theoretical physics that most alien scientists didn't even understand. Turn fire, he ordered, but then added quickly, precision targeting only. Disable their weapons, but avoid casualties. I won't be responsible for starting a galactic war. Park Minho's digital consciousness interfaced directly with the ship's targeting systems, his response coming with inhuman speed and accuracy. Understood, Captain. Activating dark matter beam arrays. The Prometheus Unbound's weapon systems came online with a subtle hum that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. The dark matter beams were invisible to the naked eye, but their effects were immediately apparent. Streams of exotic particles that existed on the edge of reality itself lanced out from the human ship with surgical precision. The first target was Admiral Kethfer's flagship. The dark matter beam struck the massive battlecruiser's primary weapons array. The ship's guns simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, but somehow rendered completely inert. The beam had disrupted the fundamental quantum processes that allowed the weapons to function, essentially turning them into expensive pieces of decorative metal. Dozens of other alien vessels found themselves similarly disabled within seconds. The Viridian crystal ships watched in horror as their energy weapons flickered and died. The Korthax missile swarms suddenly lost their guidance systems and began flying in random directions. Fighter squadrons found their engines shutting down, forcing them to drift helplessly through the nebula. Impossible, Admiral Kethfer's voice crackled across the open communication channels. Our combined firepower should be able to destroy a small moon. How is one ship absorbing everything we have? The answer came from Dr. Veltara, aboard the Viridian science vessel. Her crystalline form was glowing with fear as she analyzed the battle data. Admiral, their technology is beyond anything in our databases. The energy readings I'm detecting suggest they're manipulating dark matter itself. That should be impossible. According to our understanding of physics, all units maintain distance and continue bombardment, Admiral Kethfer ordered, though his voice carried a note of desperation. This confirms our worst fears. Human technology is beyond our current capabilities, but we cannot allow them to escape. Captain Jiho watched as more alien reinforcements emerged from hyperspace jumps throughout the nebula. The enemy fleet was growing larger by the hour, with ships arriving from every corner of the galaxy. He realized with growing horror that this wasn't just a military engagement. This was an extermination attempt. They're treating us like a plague, he muttered, watching the tactical display show more red dots appearing at the edge of sensor range. We're not just fighting a battle here. We're fighting for humanity's right to exist. Park Min-ho's holographic form nodded grimly. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. They're mobilizing everything they have. This isn't going to end here. The Prometheus Unbound began to move, its quantum-fold drive bending space around the ship in ways that made the alien sensors register impossible readings. The human vessels simply slipped past the bewildered alien fleet, moving faster than their tracking systems could follow. Behind them, emergency transmissions flooded the galactic communication networks. The humans were heading for civilized space, and nothing seemed capable of stopping them. The capital world of Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. From the planet's surface, billions of inhabitants looked up at their night sky to witness what appeared to be a second sun burning in the darkness. The orbital battle above their world was so intense that the energy discharges from thousands of weapons created a continuous light show that turned night into day. Captain Lee Jiho stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, watching as sector fleets from across the galaxy converged on their position like moths drawn to a flame. The hegemony had called in every favor, activated every alliance, and pulled ships from the furthest reaches of their territory. Massive dreadnoughts that hadn't left their home ports in decades were now burning through space at maximum speed, their crews driven by a fear that bordered on panic. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Ancient superweapons that had been locked away since the last great galactic war were being dragged out of storage and pointed at a single human vessel. The hegemony deployed their planet-killer cannons, weapons so powerful they were normally reserved for destroying asteroids that threatened inhabited worlds. The Viridian Collective activated their stellar manipulation arrays, devices that could redirect the energy of entire stars. The Korthax Empire unleashed their dimensional torpedoes, weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Captain Arya reported, her voice carrying a note of concern that was unusual for the normally calm artificial intelligence. The energy readings from these weapons are off the charts. Some of these devices are powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. Jiho felt the ship shudder as another wave of attacks struck their adaptive shielding. The defensive systems were holding, but he could see the strain on the ship's systems. Warning lights flickered across the bridge displays as the Asterisk Prometheus Unbound Asterisk worked to absorb and redirect the incredible amounts of energy being thrown at them. Return fire. Minimal force, he ordered. Continue disabling their weapons systems only. The human ship's response was swift and precise. Dark matter beams lanced out with surgical accuracy, turning the galaxy's most advanced weapons into useless metal. But for every ship they disabled, two more seemed to take its place. The enemy fleet was growing so large that it was becoming difficult to count individual vessels. Sir Park Min-ho's holographic form appeared beside him. I'm detecting some very unusual energy signatures approaching from subspace. These readings don't match any known species in our database. Before Jiho could respond, the space around Nexus Prime began to shimmer and distort. Reality itself seemed to bend as beings of pure energy emerged from dimensions that existed beyond normal space-time. The architects had arrived. These ancient entities were legends even among the galaxy's oldest civilizations. They were beings that had transcended physical form millions of years ago, existing as pure consciousness in dimensions that touched every point in the universe simultaneously. They rarely interfered in the affairs of younger species, preferring to observe and maintain what they called the cosmic balance. Captain Arya reported, her voice filled with something that sounded like awe. I'm detecting massive energy signatures. Approaching from subspace, these entities are not part of the Galactic Alliance. In fact, they're not entirely part of our reality. The architect's presence filled the bridge like a weight pressing down on everyone's minds. Their communication came not through words or sounds, but as pure thought that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the consciousness of every person aboard the Prometheus Unbound human vessel. The telepathic voice resonated through Jihos. Mind, your existence threatens the balance we have maintained for eons. Your species' rapid advancement and destructive potential represent a danger to the cosmic order. Submit to erasure, or face consequences beyond your comprehension. Captain Jiho felt the weight of their words like a physical blow. These were beings that had existed since before his galaxy had formed, entities that had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. If they considered humanity a threat, then perhaps the galaxy's fears were justified. We're not here to threaten anyone, he said aloud, hoping the architects could hear him. We just want to survive. The response came with crushing finality. Survival of your species requires the destruction of countless others. Your technological advancement follows patterns we have observed before. You will consume, expand, and eventually destroy everything you touch. This cannot be permitted. It was then that Park Min-ho's research subroutines, running in the background of the ship's computer systems, made a discovery that changed everything. The holographic officer's form suddenly became more solid, more urgent, as he processed data that had been hidden in the ship's historical databases for 2 centuries. Jiho, he said, his voice cutting through the telepathic pressure from the architects, you need to see this right now. I've been analyzing the attack patterns and ship configurations of the fleets we've been fighting. I've also been cross-referencing their weapon signatures with historical data from our colonial archives. The tactical display shifted, showing not just the current battle, but overlays of previous engagements from 200 years ago. The patterns were unmistakable. The same ship designs, the same weapon configurations, the same tactical formations that were being used against them now had been used against human colonies centuries earlier. These aren't random alien species that just happen to work together. Park Min-ho continued, his voice growing more urgent. These are the same powers that destroyed our colonies, same fleets that attacked Earth's outer settlements, the same weapons that were used to systematically eliminate every human presence in the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. Historical records that had been sealed in the ship's archives showed clear documentation of coordinated attacks on human settlements. The Hegemony, Viridian Collective, and Korthax Empire had worked together before, not to defend against some external threat, but to eliminate humanity entirely. They didn't just try to kill us, Jiho whispered, the full horror of the revelation washing over him. They tried to erase us from existence entirely. The truth was even worse than he had imagined. Humanity hadn't simply vanished or gone extinct through some natural disaster or internal conflict. The galaxy's major powers had made a deliberate decision to commit genocide against his entire species. They had viewed human technological advancement and expansion as a threat to their established order, and they had acted to eliminate that threat completely. Captain Arya added, her voice now carrying a note of anger that he had never heard from the artificial intelligence before. I'm detecting evidence of systematic historical revision in the galactic databases. Records of human settlements have been deleted, trade agreements have been erased. Even astronomical surveys that mentioned human colonies have been modified to remove any reference to our species. The conspiracy was vast and complete. Not content with simply destroying human civilization, the galactic powers had worked to erase every trace of humanity's existence from history itself. They had convinced themselves that the genocide was necessary for galactic stability, and they had rewritten the historical record to support their actions. And now they're trying to finish what they started, Jiho said, watching his more enemy. Fleets emerged from hyperspace. They're not just afraid of our technology, they're afraid that someone will discover what they did. The architect's telepathic voice filled the bridge once more, but now Jiho could hear something different in their tone. Not just cosmic authority, but fear. Human, your species was eliminated for the greater good. Your return threatens to destabilize The peace we have maintained you must submit to erasure. No, Jiho said firmly, his voice carrying across the bridge and somehow reaching the ancient entities. We have the right to exist, we have the right to survive, and we have the right to seek justice for what was done to us. The battle above. Nexus Prime continued to rage, but now it had become something more than a fight for survival. It had become a reckoning for a crime that had been hidden for 2 centuries. The galactic core had always been considered the most dangerous region of space. Here, where ancient stars burned with incredible intensity and black holes warped the very fabric of reality. No sane pilot would dare to venture. The gravitational forces alone were enough to tear apart any normal spacecraft. And the radiation levels could kill most known life forms within minutes. Yet today, this cosmic furnace had become the stage for the largest military operation in recorded galactic history. Captain Lee Jiho stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, his hands gripping the command chair as he watched the tactical display fill with red dots. Over 50,000 vessels from every major civilization in the galaxy were converging on their position, their combined mass creating gravitational distortions that rippled through space like waves on a pond. The sight was both magnificent and terrifying. A demonstration of unity among species that had never before worked together. On such a scale, the enemy fleet stretched as far as the ship's sensors could detect. Massive hegemony battleships floated alongside delicate viridian crystal vessels that sparkled like jewels in the starlight. Korthak's swarm ships moved in perfect formation, their collective intelligence coordinating thousands of individual craft, as if they were fingers on a single hand. Behind them came species that Jiho had never seen before. Alien civilizations from the furthest reaches of the galaxy that had traveled across impossible distances to join this final confrontation. "Captain," Arya announced, her voice carrying across the bridge with unusual urgency, "I'm ready to broadcast the truth to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The evidence of humanity's genocide is undeniable. Historical records, deleted files, witness testimonies that were buried for centuries. All of it," Jiho nodded grimly. "The truth about what had happened to humanity 2 centuries ago was too important to keep hidden. Do it. Send the transmission on all frequencies. Let every civilization in the galaxy know what really happened to my people." The broadcast went out across millions of worlds simultaneously, carried by quantum communication networks that spanned the entire galaxy. On countless planets, beings of every imaginable form stopped what they were doing to listen to the revelation that would change everything they thought they knew about galactic history. The message was simple, but devastating. Humanity had not gone extinct through natural causes or internal conflict. The galaxy's major powers had systematically eliminated human civilization. Viewing their rapid technological advancement as a threat to the established order, they had destroyed colonies, eliminated entire populations, and then erased every trace of human existence from the historical record. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On some worlds, horrified populations began demanding answers from their leaders. How could such a massive conspiracy have been hidden for so long? How many other species had been eliminated in the name of galactic stability? Peaceful protests erupted into riots as citizens realized that their governments had been complicit in genocide. But the major powers had come too far to back down now. Admiral Kethfer's voice crackled across the communication channels, addressing the assembled fleet with words that carried the weight of desperation. The human vessel has just demonstrated exactly why their species had to be eliminated. They have the power to destabilize entire governments with a single transmission. They are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The architects, those ancient beings of pure energy, added their own terrible authority to the moment. Their telepathic voices reached every mind in the assembled fleet, carrying a message that brooked no argument. The human species represents a cosmic threat that must be eliminated. Their technological advancement follows patterns we have observed before. They will consume everything they touch until nothing remains. Kim Sola materialized beside Captain Jiho, her holographic form flickering with barely contained energy. The ship's former chief engineer had been one of the most brilliant minds in the Earth Defense Force, and her consciousness had been preserved in the ship's systems during the preparation for their long sleep. Now, as a digital being, she had access to the Prometheus Unbound's most dangerous systems. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying both excitement and terror, "the dark matter cannon is fully charged. All primary systems are at maximum capacity. We could end this right now. All of it. One shot could destabilize this entire sector. Maybe even reach the galactic core itself." Jiho stared at the tactical display, watching as the massive enemy fleet continued to close in on their position. The power at his fingertips was almost unimaginable. The Prometheus Unbound had been built as humanity's ultimate weapon, designed to protect Earth and its colonies from any conceivable threat. The dark matter cannon could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself, creating explosions. That would make supernovas seem like candle flames. "Could prove them right," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. "We could show them that humans really are too dangerous to exist." But as he watched the approaching armada, his attention was drawn to the smaller vessels scattered throughout the enemy formation. Not all of the ships were military vessels. Some were civilian transports that had been pressed into service there. Crews consisting of ordinary beings who had been told they were defending their homes from a terrible threat. Others were research vessels, their scientific crews driven by curiosity rather than hatred. "Arya," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the bridge with sudden determination, "prepare the Genesis Protocol, the ship's artificial intelligence." Paused for a moment, processing the implications of his order. "Captain, that will require us to sacrifice the ship and all our consciousness uploads." The Genesis Protocol was designed as a last resort, a way to preserve human knowledge and genetic diversity, even if our physical civilization was destroyed. "Are you certain this is what you want?" Jiho closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. The Genesis Protocol was humanity's final gift to the galaxy, a way to ensure that their species would survive even if the Prometheus Unbound was destroyed. But it would mean the end of everything he had fought to preserve. "Do it," he said, firmly. "Use our quantum fold technology to seed human genetic templates and technological knowledge throughout the galaxy, not as weapons but as gifts. Let humanity survive through integration, not domination." The Prometheus Unbound began to glow with impossible energy as its systems prepared for the final protocol. The ship's quantum fold drives, normally used for faster-than-light travel, were being reconfigured for an entirely different purpose. Instead of bending space to move the ship, they would bend reality itself to scatter the essence of humanity across the galaxy. The enemy fleet was now close, enough that individual ships could be seen with the naked eye. Weapons systems across 50,000 vessels were charging for the final attack, their combined firepower enough to sterilize entire star systems. But Captain Jiho was no longer watching the tactical display. Instead, he was recording one final message to the galaxy. "We could have been your destroyers," he said, his words being broadcast on every frequency the ship could access. "We had the power to burn your worlds and shatter your fleets. Instead, we choose to be your children. We choose to give you the greatest gift we possess, the chance to become something more than what you are." The Prometheus Unbound exploded not with destruction, but with creation. The ship's quantum fold drives tore reality apart at the molecular level, scattering microscopic packages of human genetic material and technological knowledge across the galaxy. The energy release was visible from thousands of light years away, a burst of golden light that seemed to touch every star in the night sky. Years later, human hybrid populations began emerging across hundreds of civilizations. Children were born with human creativity and adaptability, but also with the wisdom and knowledge of their alien parents. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest power wasn't their weapons or their technology, but their ability to adapt, survive, and ultimately forgive those who had tried to erase them from existence.